Well, somehow we are in the month of November as 2024 is winding down, and it definitely seems like Universal is gearing up their marketing efforts and just getting the word out for various aspects of Epic Universe, as we now have an opening date of May 22nd in 2025. And we have another episode of the Discover Universal podcast where they have some creatives on to talk about some aspects of the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic. And I'm curious to check this one out because a lot of areas of the Wizarding World here have been kind of tight-lipped, especially about the ride, the Battle of the Ministry. So I haven't watched this episode yet. I kind of like to do these where I don't know what they say yet and kind of get a live reaction. So hopefully they reveal some things about that ride perhaps in this. But we're going to watch through this episode here. It's not a very long one. We'll react to it and give some thoughts on it. So we're just going to get right into the video here. I'm going to fast forward this for you to save you from the cringe. Because this podcast a little bit cringy sometimes. Here we go.
So we have a surprise for you all, especially if you are big fans of Harry Potter. We have two of the people that are working on the amazing project over at Universal Epic Universe. Can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah. So I'm noticing right off the bat, this is interesting. They have the, looks like Hermione, Harry, and Ron over here blurred out. So I'm assuming that they don't have the rights to be able to use those characters on like content on the YouTube channel. It's kind of interesting, but just noticed that.
Yeah, my name is Scott Verbal. I'm the executive producer for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic.
And I am Cara Post-Brown and one of the associate producers working on our land.
Excellent. Welcome. How long have you both been with the company for?
Coming up on 12 years now.
Amazing.
Yep. 8 years for me next week.
Today we want to talk about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic.
By the way, it seemed like their audio is off a little bit, so it's not me. I'm hearing it too. So I don't know if they fix it as the episode goes on.
And can y'all share a little bit about the backstory of this land? I know we have a couple of different types of experiences here inside that we'll see once the park opens in 2025, but tell us a little bit more about that narrative.
Yeah, so the land, we describe it as it takes place from the rise of Grindelwald to the fall of Voldemort. So for the first time, we're really spanning the entire Wizarding World franchise, exploring both the Fantastic Beasts and the Harry Potter area. The land itself is focused on late 1920s Paris, as seen in the second Fantastic Beasts film. And we really are just excited to be able to show a new side of the Wizarding World that we haven't displayed in the parks before. So there's going to be familiar faces, there's going to be familiar creatures, but a whole new spin and twist.
Yeah, it's super exciting to, as a Potter fan myself, to explore a new geographical location of the Wizarding World. I mean, we're all familiar with Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley from the books, where we know Gringotts. We're super excited about the ride in our land, taking us to the Ministry of Magic for the very first time. But this is kind of a new thing for Universal and for the Wizarding World. We're seeing an aspect of the world that we haven't explored in the books. We know Fleur Delacour and her family are from France, but that's really kind of the only glimpse we get into the broader Wizarding World. So we have lots of touchstones for what's familiar in our land with creatures and different kinds of currency, but the architecture and the graphics that you'll see is so inherently Paris, but also so inherently Wizarding.
Okay.
So it's going to be familiar, but also completely new and just ripe for discovery.
So they're going to be wowed the second I step in, I would assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
The scale alone is just going to blow people away when they're standing underneath the Phoenix Arch looking down Place Cachet. It's incredible. And then the closer you get, the more details you see. Yeah. The carvings, the texture, the props, and just the world comes alive the closer you look. It's awesome.
So tell us what it's like stepping through the portal then. Like, because obviously there's a portal to enter this amazing place.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So when the guests walk through the portal, they're immediately transported to 1920s Muggle Paris. So they're in a small Muggle park with an enormous archway in front of them. And through that archway is where they get their first glimpse into Place Cachet and Wizarding Paris. So when the guests arrive, there's sounds of period automobiles and conversation, and it's really more of a soundscape cementing you in the place. But once you get into the Wizarding World, that's when you start to hear some of the iconic Harry Potter scores, period jazz music, and you're just overwhelmed by what's in front of you because it's just massive. It's the only way to describe it.
I am curious on some level, given that the Fantastic Beasts movies have not been that successful. especially when you compare them to, say, the original Harry Potter movies. So a lot of people coming to this land, obviously they know, the Wizarding World, they know Harry Potter, which is why they're doing the Battle of the Ministry based off of the original books, essentially, or those characters. So I'm curious in this, and like surely they understand that may not have as wide of like an audience in terms of people that are going to know this stuff, because I kind of feel like it's sort of similar to, say, Pandora at Disney World, where Avatar makes a ton of money, those movies, but they have no cultural footprint. And like I've seen the movies, but I don't think I could tell you the characters' names. I mean, if you told me, I might be like, oh yeah, that's his name, but I don't know this stuff in terms of that, or I would remember a lot of it. And so in that way, this land being based on 1920s Paris, obviously it opens you up to like food and doing a set time period of a land, which I think is really cool, and the scale of it. So I feel like much like Pandora, they're going to make it like immersive, a great looking land. It's something you're going to enjoy, but how much of it like is going to be you already, relying on you knowing about the Fantastic Beasts versus maybe trying to like explain it to you, or like make it to where normies or people that haven't seen those movies can kind of come along with it. In general, I'm just curious how they're going to do that, just given the Fantastic Beasts. I don't think anybody would argue they were a massive success. It has its fan base, but I don't think it's one where it's just a given that people are going to understand all these little things in here.
Yeah, the scale is incredible. I mean, our guests experiencing the Wizarding locations here in our parks today, the facades are around 35 to 40 feet. Our shortest facades are 35 to 40 feet, going up to 65 to 70 feet. It is massive.
They've said before the shortest building in this land is taller or as tall as the tallest building in Diagon Alley, if you've been over there. So the scale of it is pretty massive. So they're using forced perspective, I'm sure, because it's a theme park still, but given the fact of like most of this is not just going to be forced perspective, it's going to be legitimately built to replicate Paris in the 1920s in terms of the size and feel and everything like that. So the scale of it is very impressive. If you looked at the construction photos and things like that, it's very, very large.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And like I said, I always like to compare it to basketball. You said 60 feet, right?
Yes.
That is 6 basketball hoops stacked on top of each other. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
humongous.
Or
Yeah,
6
point-
thestrals.
There we go.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, there is a comparison too with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Diagon Alley, right? So what exactly is that, just for a guest to kind of put into perspective how big this land truly is?
Right. So if you think about the main street of Diagon Alley, Diagon Alley is this hidden place within the streets of London. It's an alley. It's inherently narrow, but this is a much wider space. It's really, we constructed a city where you can see the way the city kind of unfolds in front of you. There's different roads and intersections and places to discover, but similar to Diagon Alley, it's a wizarding shopping and dining district. So there's so much activity for the guests. It's not just a pretty place to look at. There's the wand magic, shops, restaurants. We have more than one restaurant for the first time in the Wizarding World. So there's just so much for the guests to uncover as they explore through the land.
Yeah.
I will say they have a good opportunity, and I've talked about it before, if they're able to do the food really, really well with Epic Universe and like this land. And I will say Universal's food is getting better as time has gone on, and the newer offerings that they've had, I think, are much better and much improved. So if the food is really good here, I mean, if you've ever been over to Epcot when they have the food and wine festivals and just the France Pavilion in general, it has very good food, and it's a place where people go to many times for that reason. So if the food here is really good, they have a really good opportunity to, make it another layer on top of what they're kind of known for. And I think the Harry Potter food has been good. Obviously, you got butterbeer and things like that in the existing parks, but given they're going to have more food options in here, and this really only has one ride and one show. So there's not as many attractions in here compared to many of the other lands. So I feel like the food could become something that they really focus on here and try and make it like very authentic to Paris in that time period.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we love to ask about process. So what was the process like for you all creating this area of the park? I mean, I can only imagine sitting down and watching the movies 100 times. Did you all go to Paris? What was that process like for you all creating that?
So it really starts with the source material, like everything Potter, taking those people that really truly populated the world from their brains, taking classical architecture, taking Art Nouveau, Art Deco, and creating Wizarding Paris from their brains. It's truly a testament to the classical skills that they have, and also to all of the folks back on our team that are executing it to the level that we are. So source material, going back to the original question, source material of the movies. We have a lot of set drawings from the movies, recreating things that you'll see in the movies right on our streets, down to an insane granular level of detail. The dedication is wild.
So I don't think they went to Paris. They didn't answer that question, which would make sense because even if you went to Paris now, it's not going to be like 1920. So, yeah.
Yeah, what was it like integrating the flue powder and all that stuff to this land and integrating this entire process with the attraction that's there?
Right. I mean, it's no secret that Paris and London don't exactly touch. So we had to.
You ruined it for me. I thought this whole time.
Yeah, so we had to develop a way to transport our guests, right? Everything in the Wizarding world is within story and in theme. And so creating a way to utilize something from the films, but in a new way to have really mass transportation. I mean, this is going to be a popular place. It's a city. We have to have a way to move these people. So collaborating with Warner Brothers and with the film creators to create the Metro Flue. You may be familiar with the flue powder from the films, like when Harry uses it at the Weasley's house to get to Diagon Alley. So this is taking that same concept, but scaling it for mass transit. So the guests walk into what looks very similar to a French subway station, but rather than a train platform with areas to walk into a train, there's these giant mantle places that the guests will walk through. And just like in the film, the flames of the flue powder will come up around them and transport them to the British Ministry.
That's wild.
I do want to know how they're going to do that. They've been talking about that, and obviously they're going to use some sort of visual effects here, but I am curious how they're going to do it, how it's going to look, and like how, I guess, immersive or realistic it is. But
That's wild. And I would say that's probably the moment that I'm most excited for. I want to see how they make that magic happen. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be special for sure.
Yeah.
Delivering flue powder so iconic. You know, we have platform 9 3/4, which is a really magical moment from the films, and then to create another way to experience something directly from the film for our guests and using it the way it's intended is just always special.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about that attraction?
The guests arrive at the British Ministry of Magic on the day of Dolores Umbridge's trial.
I will note that this is going to be like that in scale, like at scale. Like, so they said they're going to have the mist or the fog up top, and if you looked at the show building, this thing is massive. Like, the building itself for this ride is basically just as big as the entire land itself. But it's on scale, this whole land is something that impresses me in terms of how they're going about building this and just the immersiveness of it.
The ministry is abuzz with people finally seeing Dolores get what she deserves after all the suffering she put Harry through, all the events of the books, and the guests are going to board lifts to go to the courtroom. On the way, they find out that Umbridge escapes, and they team up with Harry, Ron, and Hermione to take down Umbridge and stop her from returning the time of Lord Voldemort.
Don't forget our new friend Higgledy.
Yeah, we're introducing a new character, Higgledy, who's Dolores Umbridge's former house elf. The guests will get to meet Higgledy in the queue and then go on the journey with her on the attraction.
That's crazy.
So cool.
So I assume there's more in this land, right? There's a live show there,
That's it? Oh my gosh. They are being super tight-lipped about this ride.
right? Can you
That's
tell us
right.
more about that? Because I actually know nothing about this. Can you guys elaborate
Sure.
on the live
So,
show?
if you remember back in Fantastic Beasts and the Crime of Grindelwald, there is a central circus that's taking place run by the ringmaster Skender, who unfortunately loses all of his beasts. So Skender's still around. He's there. We will run into some new faces, some familiar faces, and some wonderful circus acts as well in this really cool multiple tent spaces, and true to like the wizarding tents. Like if you remember when they go to the Quidditch World Cup, and you go into a tent and it's small on the outside and bigger on the inside. We're paying that off. So
You did it?
Yes, we did
That's
it.
cool.
We did it.
With
So
magic.
with magic. Yes,
crazy.
real magic.
Okay.
Yeah, so very, very cool show. Guests will be floored. They'll go on an emotional journey that I will let them experience for themselves.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's one of the things in the films I was like, I wonder
Yeah.
how that can be in real life, because I would love to do that. where they get into the tent and it's twice the
Right.
well, I would say twice the size, 10 times the size.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this is the first time we've ever developed a full indoor show for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So there was a lot of fun challenges that came with that of how do you design a space that works for a theater but is still an immersive in-world experience. So there was a lot of learnings for us to figure out how to make that happen, and then paying it off with a show at the caliber that the show is. The story has an unbelievable amount of emotion and heart and excitement. So we're really excited to be able to deliver this new type of experience for our guests at the Wizarding World.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the show, too, I hear we're going to come face to face with a lot of magical creatures that we have experienced in the films, right? So, which creatures can we look forward to seeing?
Ooh, well, we don't want to give them all away, but there's obviously going to be nifflers. We
Yes,
can't not
of
have
course.
nifflers in
Yeah.
the Wizarding World. So the guests won't, not only will they be able to see nifflers within the land windows, they'll actually be able to interact with them with some of the wand magic in the land. So getting a chance to not only just see these amazing creatures alive in their environment, being able to have custom one-on-one interactions is going to be really, really special. There also might be some bow truckles around. There may be
Why was that? What? That was awkward. That was weird.
some bow truckles,
Yeah.
a demiguise or two.
Yes.
There's a lot of fun, but we don't want to spoil it too much because we
Okay.
really want the guests to be able to experience it for the first time and have the surprise of seeing their favorite creatures across the entire land.
It's fair.
Is there something you can spoil for me?
Ooh, yes,
What is the food like?
spectacular.
I want to know about the food.
French
Yeah.
cuisine, of course, it's going to be good.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
So inside Cafe L'air de la Sereine, it's a beautiful French cafe environment. When you think about the streets of Paris, Parisian cafes and street-facing cafes are just an iconic piece of that city. So we wanted to deliver that, but with a wizarding twist. So in addition to the exterior patio-style dining that's so iconic, there's just these absolutely gorgeous interior spaces with fantastic beast motifs and all of this incredible artwork and architecture, which just really elevates the dining experience because it's French cuisine, right? You have to pay off the luxury and the
Yeah.
richness of the cuisine and the environment, which I think we've paid off in spades. It's a really special place, delicious sandwiches and crepes, and of course some Wizarding World inspired items
Yeah.
as well. So it really delivers even more than what you would expect from French cuisine in the Wizarding World.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
I mean, this place has the potential to be a really popular spot. Obviously, you got the outdoor seating, so it's going to be like you're eating on the streets of Paris. But I will say there's not much outdoor seating there, so I do feel like that's going to be difficult to get a table there a lot of times. Because if I remember right, there's only like maybe 10 tables. There's not that many out there. It looks like it's pretty big inside, but again, if they pull the food off, that will become an attraction in of itself because, you know, people like to eat at theme parks and French food typically goes over pretty well with people.
Pretty sure that's where like fine dining was invented.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Pretty
so,
much.
so,
Pretty much.
yeah, that's awesome.
And breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right?
That's correct.
All three
Yeah.
meals.
That's wild.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
so
never
we
have
can
to
go-
leave.
So is that the only restaurant, or are there any other restaurants within the land that we can experience?
Yeah, so actually we have our Le Goblet Noir, which is over in our Flamels area, which is a very different flavor to the rest of the land. We're kind of revisiting that Harry Potter Diagon Alley half timber, raked half timber building medieval feel. So it's a little bit darker of an area. You kind of get the sense when you walk in that the owner of the establishment had one location, and then over the years, over the many decades, he's kind of glommed on to the other establishments around. So you have this kind of warren, like rabbit's warren, sense of discovery as you walk through, each kind of a different style, but you have a lot of like kind of darker artifacts. Maybe there's less savory customers, wizards in this area. So as opposed to the bright shiny of the rest of the world, we have this kind of more darker tavern feel. And with that, the food also reflects that. So we have like more of this home cooking European sense that moves away from being very, very French and more a little bit more European and international. So a good home cooked meal might be served to you on some pewter, but like some, comfort foods from around the region.
Paris.
That's the first time I've heard them talk about this restaurant. So it's been known that there is a restaurant in there. And if you're not sure or familiar what this is, if you looked at the construction videos, which we've done here and other channels of as well, but there's a little alley where this is. And in that alley, it's like, you can see that picture. It's like more, it looks aged and almost like it's just darker. And we've known there's a restaurant in there, but this is the first time I can recall them actually talking about anything of it. So getting a name and then kind of cuisine here. I think this is new info. I think, unless it's been talked about elsewhere and I just haven't heard about it. But this is the first I've heard of it, I believe.
This is such an international location, so being able to pay off not just French food, but food from across Europe is really key. And maybe there's some hints to some dark wizards that may be hanging around this area as well.
Dark Wizard.
That was what I kind of assumed, is like the area is with the dark wizard is kind of what that is. So that would make sense.
Desserts and comfort food. I like that.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Keeps you on your toes a little bit while you're eating.
Wonder if they're going to have actors like they're going to have over in Dark Universe. So if over there at the Burning Blade Tavern, they're going to have like, actors in different costumes and outfits like walking around in there. So I am curious if this is going to be maybe what they do in here also.
What about beverages? Anything else?
Yeah, we're also working closely with our culinary team to create new beverages for the Wizarding World. Obviously, we have a lot of the beverages that guests know and love, like butterbeer, but delivering cocktails that are more period to that time in France, but with a wizarding twist and new non-alcoholic offerings as well. So there's going to be something new for everyone.
Awesome. And I have to ask too, you mentioned a little bit about butterbeer, but how are we going to experience the butterbeer in the land?
So the butterbeer is going to be served out of an all-new butterbeer cart. Of course, there wouldn't typically just be a cart hanging out in Place Cachet, so the butterbeers actually come in with the circus. So with the circus in town, there's some additional outdoor vending in the space. It's really activating the area and offering a guest a nice place to get a sweet treat, a sweet cold treat in the middle of the day.
I feel like I remember my first time stepping into each of the areas and just the awe on my face and the wonder. What do you hope guests just feel and experience their first time walking in there, and even really after their first time going?
Right. Well, I think we have a really unique opportunity to pay off two different types of reactions, because when the guests walk into Place Cachet, it's a space that they've never experienced before. So not only are they going to get to experience a new side of the Wizarding World, but they're going to get to experience this enormous environment that they've seen on film, but they don't know as intimately as they may know Hogsmeade or Diagon Alley. But then in addition to this new experience, we have the British Ministry of Magic, one of the most iconic spaces in the entire world. So having the ability to have this new experience, but then also something so close to the fans' hearts and so familiar like the British Ministry is just going to be really special. I mean, people are going to cry. I think I'm going to cry.
Oh, yeah. No.
So they're admitting that people aren't going to know what this is as much, which makes complete sense, because the rumors that I had heard were that this ride, they originally wanted to do it after Fantastic Beasts, but given that those movies, again, didn't really do very well, that they then based it off of a proven commodity, which would be just the original Harry Potter, movies. So that makes sense. So at least that kind of answered my question a little bit in terms of they kind of understand they're going to have to explain some stuff, or people aren't going to necessarily know all the things in this land, because a lot of people haven't seen those movies probably. So
That's normal. It's normal at this point.
Yeah.
You go into a new land with us and you cry.
Yeah.
I think what's really exciting is we're going to really be a multi-sensory experience. You're going to feel the cobblestones under your feet. You're going to smell a candy store. You're going to hear French language being spoken and be engulfed in jazz and the scores from the film. So it's truly for everybody, and everybody will be able to take something away from it. It's just going to be like, we're in France.
Is there any shopping involved there?
Oh yeah, we've got
course.
retail locations for sure.
Okay.
So we all know and love Ollivanders, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Paris has to do its own thing. Paris, the House of Couture, the home of Couture, has its very own premier wand maker, Cosme Acajor. Cosme Acajor and her house of wand making, or as they say in French, baguette magique.
Which is not magic bread.
It's not
To be
magic bread.
clear.
That is how you say.
Thank you for clearing that
Yes,
up.
baguette magique
Be a good
is
idea to
wand
do
in
that.
French.
Love it.
Her philosophy, unlike Ollivanders, which is very the wand chooses the wizard, she's more that haute couture. The wizard influences the wand. So we'll have a whole new line of specialty wands that are custom to Cosme Acajor that the guests will be able to purchase and explore with their magic throughout the land. And the designs are absolutely gorgeous. They truly live up to a Parisian sensibility of style. So definitely one of the retail places that people should beeline towards. We also have our department store, La Galerie Mirifique, which is paying off that Art Deco style that is very quintessential to the 1920s, 1930s. And guests will be able to purchase a lot of home goods and robes and wonderful things in there, and maybe run into some nifflers. I don't know.
Oh,
Now, I do know they are upgrading like all the wand experiences in all the parks. So it's I don't know which version, I can't remember which version, but there are going to be new types of wands. So I imagine perhaps like they're doing it for Epic Universe and the other lands are, going to be upgraded to match those. So I'm not exactly sure on the details of what they're going to do more of and how differently they're going to work. But I do know that I don't know if they're going to talk about that, but that is something that they're going to do. I don't know exactly when that gets implemented, but it will be, of course, by the time Epic Universe opens. But I'm not sure when it hits the other parks.
I love it.
yeah.
I love it.
With Cosme, sorry.
No, you first.
With Cosme Akajor, we also have the ability to have her in the park where the guests will actually get to interact with Cosme in and around her shop, cast magic with Cosme, and of course there are some British imported Ollivander's wands as well for those traditionalists in Paris.
I like how you labeled that. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
So they're going to have the wands that are in the other parks too. So which makes sense because again, the Fantastic Beasts movies, not everybody's going to know about that. It's not going to make as much sense, and people aren't going to go in there and want those. They're going to want, the wands that they had in the Harry Potter original movies. So that makes complete sense.
Is there anything that you guys are most excited for? Like, if you had to say something you were most excited for this entire experience, what would it be?
I think I'm most excited for the
They better say the ride.
guests to come face to face with all these beasts in so many different ways, right? And just being able to see these creatures that are so fantasized, and in the Harry Potter books and movies, these creatures are so carefully created. There's so much thought behind them. They're familiar yet not of this world, and being able to deliver that and have the guests come face to face with these amazing, fantastic beasts is just going to be really special.
What about you, Cara?
I think I'm really excited for guests to be challenged by the language. Because
there we are.
That sounds terrible. I don't want to be challenged by language. I want to enjoy a theme park. As somebody who took 3 years of Spanish, I might be able to give you a sentence in Spanish. I don't want to have to try and speak another language when I'm going to a theme park personally.
We have not shied away. We have not shied away. You are in Paris. Things are in French. So definitely download your translation apps and have them on hand because you're going to want to know what every single thing says.
The magic room.
If they're going to do that, I imagine this may be something they kind of tweak along the way because Disney tried this with, say, Pandora because they wanted to be very immersive. So they didn't have like signs for like where the bathrooms are or direct signs of where the ride entrances are. And then they found out rather soon after opening that continually guests were just going up to cast members and being like, hey, where's the bathroom? Where's this? Where's that? So if they are doing this to where it's like just in French, I have a feeling that this may be something they could still have that, but it might say underneath it, this is what it is in English. Because, personally speaking, I'm not going to download a translation app to go figure out what the bathroom is. That's just me. I don't know. I don't know how many people will. I'm sure some people would, but me personally, it's not something I'm looking to do in the spur of the moment in a land. Is just go down, get an app, trying to figure out where the bathroom is or where this, a food place is or something like that. I mean, it's a small nitpick, but I'm just saying.
Really is in the details, not only just the beasts that are carved throughout the land and the wizarding details, but also the Easter eggs. This world is connected to the entire Harry Potter universe, so being able to intersperse those little Easter eggs where appropriate is really fun for the hardcore fans.
Can you tell us any of those Easter eggs, or is it got to stay a secret?
That ruins the fun.
We just have to look in every single crevice when we're walking in there, and the buildings are tall, so we're gonna have a lot of looking to do.
Yeah, 60.
Is it weird to anybody else how often during these episodes she looks over at him? It's kind of, I don't know. It seems very unnatural. Yeah, I don't know.
God, Thestrals.
Yeah.
I've never seen one.
That's a good thing.
Exactly. I've never seen one.
Oh my gosh.
Well, they didn't give us much more information in this, unfortunately. We did find out that the information about the other restaurant, which I hadn't heard anything about that before, so the theming there seems intriguing in terms of like dark wizards and things like that, which I think that will go over well with a lot of people. This one, I think the Battle of the Ministry is the thing that I have the most questions about in terms of like, how is it really going to work? It doesn't seem like we're going to hear anything about that before the park opens. I have a feeling it's probably J.K. Rowling and Warner Brothers, perhaps, like they can't say too much considering that they couldn't even have Harry, Ron, and Hermione on the poster behind them. And really, that kind of tells you, too, when they're advertising Epic Universe and saying there's a Wizarding World, they're using those characters to advertise it and not the Fantastic Beasts. So it is a little bit of an interesting approach with the land. I have heard some people say that it's a mistake, or they're doing sort of like Disney did with Galaxy's Edge, where you have all these Star Wars movies and things to choose from, and they just narrow down into the sequel trilogy, which I think, at least to me, I do not like the sequel trilogy. It's the least popular trilogy amongst the Star Wars movies. But but at the same time, they're putting it into this Fantastic Beast world, but they also do still have the existing lands in the other parks that are the very popular ones from the books and the movies. But I think they do understand where they stand with this, which is why the Battle of the Ministry is based off of the original, characters, because they know those are the things that people know. So I will be curious about the approach of it in terms of, I'm sure there's going to be Easter eggs for people that know Fantastic Beasts, but just trying to understanding, and it seems like they do understand that people coming in here are not going to be super familiar with these movies because, again, they weren't massively successful. And but I do like the idea in general, just outside of any IP, of like doing a period land like this, like in 1920s Paris. I think that's unique in of itself. So just given, like, to me, you wouldn't have to necessarily have it be after Fantastic Beasts, but it's a little bit of a stretch, I suppose, to say it's going to, go into the Ministry of Magic, which I think that in of itself, I think that's the thing that's going to be the biggest draw. It's just the fact that you're going to be able to go into the Ministry of Magic. I think that's something that people have wanted for a very long time. As this originally, I believe this was rumored to go into Islands of Adventure at one point, and then they decided to put all this in here. So they were going to do a Ministry of Magic ride, and they just moved it over into Epic Universe here. So, but they do have, of course, a lot of things they know are hits with people, butterbeer and the wands and different things like that. So it's not like they're going from scratch here. So I think hopefully they find a pretty good balance there. I will say, I'm not really looking forward to have a language barrier in a theme park land. So if they're going to really stick hardcore to that, I have a feeling that could change, just given if people are confused on where to go and they're always going up to team members and asking them where the bathroom is, where this is. I think that's something they probably want to avoid. Now, something they didn't talk about, there is going to be a bar in here that is American style bar that's going to use English and things. So not everything in here is going to be French. They are going to have some, they can get away with an American styled tavern, it all being English because it's supposed to be themed that way. So there are some things that they didn't mention, but most of the things they talked about are things that we've heard before outside of the other restaurant, but definitely seems they're being tight-lipped. I kind of figured that may be the case here because this episode is only like 20-some minutes long, so not a lot of information about this one. I'm also curious about how much they'll be able to talk about Super Nintendo World. It's given we already know about, there's other Super Nintendo World lands in other theme parks, but given like Donkey Kong Country and stuff, but I don't know. Nintendo is a company that a lot of times is very controlling, so they may not be able to say too much about what is coming to the land if they do an episode on Super Nintendo World. I don't know if they will or not, but either way, we did learn a little bit of something here, not as much as some of the other ones, but again, it's kind of nice to be able to hear from the people that worked on this, and I do apologize for the cringiness of the podcast. It is not my style of podcast that I typically will listen to, but given they have some of the creatives on from Epic Universe, I figure sometimes it's worth getting through it to get some of that tidbits of information there. But we got a little bit here, not a whole lot. Well, that's going to be it for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about the Fantastic Beasts theme land here and how they are approaching the Ministry of Magic land here? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.